myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you.
Good evening and welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is Friday night and
sorry lads, sorry.
Steve Hasty, why are you flower arranging?
Sorry, I didn't realise we're on. I like to do this, in the spring. The sun's come out, the spring's here. I've been down to Dean today. Walked past my mate Steve's house in Jesmond and picked up a few flowers. And I thought, might as well do a bit of arranging.
Christ, I thought it was bloody Morrissey for a minute there.
Well,
I think
every day is like Monday, isn't it? The trouble is with Steve Bruce, every day is cloudy and grey for Newcastle fans, isn't it? But I mean, what do you reckon, Steve? Done good.
Very good, mate. Very good. You've done well. Mate.
Yeah.
You can tell you live in the more salubrious parts of Tyneside. Compared to me, there's no daffodils here, mate. Brilliant though, great stuff. Plenty to talk about tonight. By God, have we? We do really want to as well pay respects to a few people tonight as well. At 7 o'clock, I think it is. We've been asked to raise a glass by Dan Harrison for absent friends. So at 7 o'clock, we'll come back to that just before we go off air, and we'll tell you a little bit more about it. But 7 o'clock that'll be. So thanks to Dan Harrison for getting in touch. Also, want to pay respects to David from NUFC 360. We didn't know him. None of us really knew him. We've had a little bit of interaction with the guys from NUFC 360 account, but our condolences, of course, go to David and his family after that tragic news this week. And it's been an awful time for everybody. COVID is affecting not just us in the UK and in Dubai and around the world. It's affecting everybody, and whether it's COVID directly or the aftermath with the mental side of things, mental health, it's never good. So like we keep saying, and like we did with our campaign, phone a friend, make sure you give people a ring. Little things help. Every now and then, you might be feeling top of the world yourself, but guaranteed somebody else isn't. And people hide it well these days, especially gadgies. So give them a ring and make sure that you do your little bit each day. That's all you need to do. Just pick up the phone. But our condolences, as I say, to the lads at NUFC 360 and the family of the lad concerned. Right, Christ, where do we start after this week? Let's start with our future saviour, and we still believe that it's possible. But let's start with the news that broke today about Amanda Staveley's case. Steve, thoughts on that today?
You know what? Amanda came out with her dignity intact. I think that's the first word to use. Anyone who read the judgment, she just didn't come out with the money for whatever reason the judge decided and made his decision known. It's not a case that we've followed with interest in terms of the takeover or anything like that, because it was very much a sideshow. It was something that had been going on in the background that was specific to Amanda Staveley and her husband and her family, and I suppose her business. But in terms of the takeover, because that's the bit, that's the one thing that interests us. I mean, I think it'd be fair to say that I cannot see it having really any impact whatsoever, because if my understanding is correct, the whole outcome of that deal, or the takeover rather, didn't hinge on the outcome of the deal. So the court case that she was involved in. So as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, it's continue as we have been, which is wait for the arbitration panel to be set up and completed, and wait for the arbitration to be completed, and wait for a decision from there, or wait for something else to happen that might heed the arbitration not necessary. And that's been the case since when? December, January, February, October, November. I've lost count, Steve. I don't know about you. It just seems to have, it's amazing, isn't it, that how long these things take. But it also, it's very much, I think from any fan's perspective, it's the fact that the court case is running parallel to an absolutely disastrous run of form by our team and by the manager, who's picked up 8 points from a possible 45.
Okay, Mitch, your take on it today? I mean, I think what Steve said is very, very accurate. I mean, I know that, it's disappointing when people read things about Amanda Staveley and hear about what's happened, but I think Steve's right. I don't feel that it's got anything to do with the takeover.
No, it never has. If you go back through statements that I have made publicly about the court case and its relevancy to the takeover, the relevancy to the takeover is nil. At the end of the day, it has no influence or no effect on the ongoing process and processes. It does, however, probably cap off a frustrating, irritating, and personally hurtful week for both Amanda and Maydad, and I think that's the thing they must be sitting and fuming about at the moment. To actually dig into the judge's decision, it's sort of basically it hinges on, that process wasn't correct, but you're not getting any compensation. That's it. So, but in terms of takeover relevancy, it never was relevant, and it never would be.
No, definitely not. And good luck to Amanda. I'm sure she will appeal. I think the clarity that she got was, it proved what Barclays had treated her unfairly, and I think that's the key that comes out of it. She, in essence, it wasn't about the money. It was about clearing her name and proving her case in that way. So I just think the judge was a little bit unfair, and he's summing up as well.
I think, though, there was another recent high-profile Barclays case that went in favour of Barclays, and I think if that had gone the other way, I think it might have put a different context on the outcome of this one. I think that's affected it more than anything else. That's how I understand it when somebody who knows a lot more than me sat me down and talked it through with noddy style, because I need these things noddy style for stuff like that, because frankly, you're in an area of... where you need someone to give a little bit of clarity on it, and so I think that don't underestimate the relevancy of that other case that went through recently.
Okay, let's talk Steve Bruce and his interview today. What's really doing the rounds is his response to the question by an unnamed journalist. I couldn't work out who it was, and I don't know whether you guys know, Steve. No. Come to you first, but they asked and said that the fans weren't happy about him walking off and essentially smiling and talking to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and laughing with him after the game. Now, obviously, it was a picture that I put up during Match Day Live last weekend. I took the photo, screenshotted it off the TV, stuck it onto our broadcast, and I stuck it on Twitter. Probably the most, liked and retweeted and quoted tweet I've had of 2021 so far. Over 2,000, I think, people, retweeted it. And it showed that a lot of people were angry, because it doesn't matter whether he's known Ole Gunnar Solskjaer 20 years, like he said today. But Newcastle, the team that he professes, maybe is the better word, that he supports, have just been beaten again at Old Trafford. They're on the precipice of a relegation battle, top of the relegation trapdoor, and he's laughing as he comes off. Nobody with any media savvy does that. If you're going to have a laugh and joke with Ollie, wait until you get back in the changing rooms, away from everybody. Beggared belief to me. It really did, Steve.
It did to me as well. Absolutely. I was gobsmacked. Absolutely gobsmacked. And then to come out with the excuse, because it is an excuse. It's a. I've had 5 or 6 days to think about this type of excuse, And it shows. I mean, the manner of in his response, he jumped on that journalist straight away. He pounced, didn't he? And it was vitriolic, quite honestly. And it was embarrassing. Like that from my, I found it embarrassing. If I've ever gone to the match with somebody from another team, a supporter of another team, I've never stood there afterwards and expected them. I've I've rounded on them. I've hounded them. I've wound them up. I've been wound up and rounded on in the past as well in exactly the same situation. The last thing I've done is sat and laughed with them. You know, you've almost in an angry way. You've almost had it out with them. You're like, you know, nah. It was ridiculous. So, you know, if that was me walking off with Solskjaer in that situation and he had said that, well, I thought you played quite well, my first reaction would be, well, I think the referee did well. I think it was definitely a penalty. And I think that you should have had your captain sent off. I think that your whole attitude, the way that the referee refereed the game, and Ollie, I think, you know, if truth be known, we outplayed you, mate. Never mind, and I wouldn't be sitting there going, yeah, we outplayed you. It would be, you know what, we outplayed you, son. But I wonder whether I've never seen a situation at Old Trafford where the two managers walk off together, chatting. Normally, even if it was Ferguson or it was Mourinho, it very rarely happened. They would be down the tunnel, they're away. They do their own little bit and they're away. But for the walk, because of where it is, and walk into kind of that full, half length of the pitch that you have to walk along chatting with the manager. Why isn't he chatting with his coaches? Why isn't he going over to some of the players whose performance in the last 30 minutes was shocking and be remonstrating with them? Why isn't he like Rafa with his arm around somebody, telling them, even if they've had a decent game or they've scored a decent goal, telling them where they went wrong for the other 89 minutes? Where's all of that gone? You know, that's the passion. That's what it's like. Instead, he's laughing and joking. It's just, It was an insult to Newcastle fans, quite frankly, Steve.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I agree with that. And what was your take on that, Neil? I mean, Steve quite rightly says, Steve Hasty, quite rightly says that Steve Bruce is, he should have left it until he got in the dressing room, really, shouldn't he?
Absolutely. If he had any bit of an ounce, an ounce of forethought. But I think we're seeing stuff coming out of the dressing room now from the manager, from Shelby's interview, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit today as well, that the entire dressing room seems to be utterly tone deaf to what's actually going on. That reaction to that journalist, and the last time he got snappy like that was with Craig Hope, but it didn't sound like Craig to me. So I don't know who it was that he jumped all over. But, I mean, to react like that, or is it just you? Well, no, it isn't. And it's not just about fans on social media. I know there's fans who have nothing to do with social media are getting irritated with it all. You know, and some of the other coaches come out with today, contradicting himself. Today, it's not about formations, it's about players. Well, is that right? Well, hang on. When you were saying you were playing 2 false 10s about 3 or 4 weeks ago, it was about formations. And when you were desperate to change from a back 5 to a back 4, that was about formations. Now it's about players. It's like he's just making it up as he goes along, utterly unaware of the actual situation that we're in. And we're not even in a relegation dogfight. We're sleepwalking to relegation.
Yeah.
And so the levels of tone deafness there are embarrassing, and to do something like that, which is quite crass, to be laughing and joking, coming off the pitch. I mean, what did he say to them at half time? We'll come out a different side and not for the better. And so, Ollie, my half-time team talk worked, and is that what he was saying? God knows. But it's this level of arrogance and disrespect to the fan base that's oozing out of the club at the moment. That's what's got worried, because those of us who've seen relegated teams before in our lifetime know this feeling too well.
Yeah, we do. Obviously, other things in the news included this. Stop gambling with our club. The latest offerings from War Flags stuck up at St James's Park last night. Thoughts on that, Steve?
You know what? That's a brand new flag, and it could have been 13-year-old. That was my, to be perfectly honest, because if they just dug that out of the cupboard from 13 years ago, we would have all gone, yep, good stuff. But it's not. It's a recent flag, and everything about it is that this is a gamble. Yes, this is a gamble by Mike Ashley. But it's more than that. It's more than him gambling. It's the full season. We could go back to the choices and the fact that, and this is what the press are looking for. They're looking for to go back as far as his appointment in July 2019, because I've seen little snippets in the newspaper about that very thing, and quotes from the likes of yourself and myself and Mitch and other fans about not wanting them in the first place. And that's what, and this is the narrative that the press are going to build up on, that, well, they never really wanted him. And this is what his friends in the press are going to use to defend his corner, that will put them under pressure. I read an interesting article just about an hour before we came on air, actually. And it was just a little snippet at the end of something by Martin Samuel, who was in the Daily Mail. And he's talking about fans, and he's talking about the pressure that fans put on managers and put on players and performances. And he was relating Ipswich Town with Mick McCarthy, and when they got rid of him because the fans wanted rid of him, and look where they are now, they're no better off. And then he was relating to the fact that McCarthy has done wonders at Cardiff since he took over. He's only had like half a dozen games or something, but I think they've had a run of 5 wins on the trot or something. And right the way through, and you know what's coming. And right the way at the end, he came up with a classic little piece that threw in Newcastle, and he just says, still, because he's talking about the negativity in a crowd and the lack of atmosphere is no longer given negativity, but credit to Newcastle, because even without fans inside St James's Park, a move of restless pessimism and disapproval, particularly when results weren't bad, has helped to suck the confidence from Steve Bruce's team. I was like, eh? He then goes on to say, now they are in the relegation battle, so eagerly anticipated, as though it was us that wanted the relegation battle, as though that when Bruce got the job in 2019, we went, oh, get in. We'll be able to get rid of him if we get into a relegation battle. And then he goes on, so, yes, it is hoped football has learnt the importance of fans during the lockdown. Equally, some fans may have learnt the value of not having a foot on the throat of the manager and his team all the time, because it's hard to breathe that way. And I just thought, what is he talking about? It's like, this is absolutely ridiculous stuff to come out. But that's what the press are now blaming us fans for where we are in the league.
Good evening,
and
Ian.
Absolutely insulting. Hi, Ian. You all right? Just on a rant.
All right, lad.
I didn't want to stop him mid-rant. How are you doing? You okay?
You know what it is, Ian? It was just like exactly as though I've just carried on from the last time I seen you last week. It's just following on. But
and you didn't stop for breath. You didn't stop.
No, well, I haven't actually. I feel as though I haven't, because it's been an exhausting week. But it's just it really, really irritates and annoys me that these press guys out there, and even with a press conference like we've witnessed today, where Bruce is on the defensive, it's the fault of us fans. It's just like, no, not having it whatsoever. We didn't arrange for a team and put out teams that have got 8 points out of a possible 45. That's down to Steve Bruce, and it's down to the players. It's not down to us fans. We haven't even been in the ground, for God's sake. Right. And he's trying to say that the pressure that we're putting on Steve Bruce, even though we're not there, is something to behold and something for the fingers to be pointed at us. Nah, not a chance. Idiot. Bloke was an idiot for writing that.
Yeah, I'd agree. Mitch, what was your feelings on that? I mean, look, obviously, I've got to be honest. I'm not being controversial here, right? But I don't know why they wasted their money, is my honest opinion. I like it. It's a great design. I know that people still feel Mike Ashley's the biggest enemy. The guy is trying to sell the club. Stop gambling with our club is obviously an aim at getting rid of Steve Bruce. I still think if we don't get points in the next 2 games, he's going to have a decision to make, i.e. he will have to get rid of Steve Bruce and probably bring Graham Jones in to caretake until the end of the season. But I don't know. I just don't know what good that's going to do. You know, we know how Mike Ashley reacts to this kind of thing as well. You know, he's one of them who reacts the opposite way to the way you want him to. He's not just going to suddenly leave because you hang a flag outside the ground. He's not gonna suddenly leave because, you know, I stick a Vickers cassock on and walk with a coffin up there with a load of mates to try and show him that, you know, this is the error of your ways. You know, we know that isn't Mike Ashley. The only thing that drives Mike Ashley out of Newcastle United is the fact that he needs his money back and the fact that he wants out. And, you know, no amount of, you know, flags, I'm afraid, are going to make a blind bit of difference. I don't know what you feel. That's my opinion.
Steady on. You're going to be accused of being soft on Ashley all of a sudden, which was one of the more surprising comments I saw thrown around. Why has everybody gone soft on Mike Ashley? I said a few weeks ago, Mike Ashley hasn't suddenly turned into some altruistic wannabe saviour of Newcastle United Football Club. He just wants his cash in his back pocket and be gone. And we should help him out the door every way we can. Steve's right. That banner could have been applicable at least 4 times over the last 13 years. And I think we're probably, and certainly since I've been expat, actually having some physical distance from the situation has made me sort of step back a little bit and look at all the things we've done and been involved with over the years, from Vickers cassocks to marches to banners to you know, to all sorts, and trying to organise stuff. And then also during times when we managed to sit down and eventually break bread with some of them, the times me and Steve sat with Lambias, for example, and how in what 13, 14 months that turned from all-out red-faced warfare to somebody who you could actually sit and interact with without at least losing your temper. Ashley, you're right. Ashley does things his way, always has, always will. It's why you used to frustrate the city, because the city would tell him he couldn't do certain things a certain way, and then he'd just dig his heels in, go all belligerent, and try and prove them wrong. And more often than not, did. That's why he managed to build the business empire he has. Nobody's soft on him, and nobody wants him out more than me and you guys. And I think everything we've done over the last 13 years would prove that, really. And I, you know what, Steve, I get what you're saying about, yep, it's a really good flag and it's a really good thing to do, but why have you wasted your money? However, there's some of us who are that agitated and that upset. You want to feel like you can do something, just something. And because we can't get in the ground together and cheer, because that atmosphere in St James's Park, I think if the crowds were there over this period of time, Bruce would already be gone, because the atmosphere in the ground would have been so toxic weeks ago. And that's what's letting them get away with it. And that's what's creating the false sense of security, I believe. I think that's certainly contributing to the complacency that seems to be oozing out of the dressing room as well. This sort of, they're almost not realising they're in a relegation fight. And so if somebody can do something like this, which just at least stirs the pot and reminds people where they are and makes them feel like, I can't just sit here during lockdown and do nothing. I've got to raise a glass to them and say, aye, well done, lads. But I get where you're coming from, but that might be because we're just a little bit more wizened and a little bit more battle weary because we've had years of it.
Yeah, I would agree. Ian, what's your take then? I'm not having a pop at the lads. I think the work that the guys do.
No, you're not.
I think the work that the guys do with the flags is absolutely stupendous. I just think, as far as I'm concerned, anyway, that it's it's not going to make a blind bit of difference.
Well, I think you're right there that it won't make a blind bit of difference, but I think what it does show is that people continue to care. And therefore, from that perspective, it's a positive gesture. It's a positive gesture of negativity, if you like. If you understand what I mean. I mean, I think on top of that, let's not forget, by the way, that it's obviously born of huge frustration. That just sort of about a fortnight ago, Paul Merson on Sky Sports News was saying, Newcastle are safe now, they've got 25 points. Nobody's going to catch them from the bottom three. And then, here we are, after last weekend's results, Fulham are 3 points behind us. We're anything but safe. And while I disagreed vehemently with Paul Merson back then, and he's been absolutely proved wrong. I think that it's been a realization by an awful lot of Newcastle fans, that punditry is yet again wrong, and Newcastle are now in a massively precarious position, because there's no doubt about it. By the way, Fulham have got form, and we haven't.
Yeah,
our form is just bloody awful, and on top of that, well, without our talismanic goal scorer at the front, and there doesn't seem to be anything that can be done by the current management in order to change that. I think there are solutions possibly within that team to make it look a lot better, but they're not being put forward, not being adhered to by our current management. I'll reiterate some of the things I said about a month ago with me Bruce out hashtag thing. If you remember that. But I mean, it's sadly now it's becoming very, very not funny indeed. Very, very not funny.
What did you make of Amanda's court case result today?
Oh, sorry, I haven't. Honestly, hey, Steve, I'm not kidding. The reason I'm late is because I'm not kidding. I've literally never stopped, and I haven't seen a damn thing. I've just been.
She didn't win a case. She didn't win a case. She cleared. What she wanted to do was essentially clear her reputation and show Barclays for what they were. But she didn't win. She didn't win the payout.
Right. Well. I mean, obviously, from her perspective, that's sad. But I'm not really sure if that's materially any different from the perspective of the takeover of the club. I mean, I even if she had won a significant payout, she wasn't going to go it alone in terms of taking over Newcastle United. And I think that the idea of her winning the sort of damages that she was claiming in the first place was always going to be an extreme result from that court case. And so I'm not surprised. Put it that way. But why am I not surprised that a bank wins?
Yes, exactly. Steve, let's move on to John Joe Shelby. He did an interview today, more or less saying what Paul Oxley said there. If you've had a bad game, as long as you run around and put the effort in, fans will forgive you. As Paul says, well, that's him buggered.
Quite right. It's Sunday League stuff again, isn't it? And we're hearing it time and time again from this Sunday League management and Sunday League crew that we've got there, sometimes turning out for Newcastle. It's like it's all right. I can run around as much as I like, as long as that little dog on the Sunday League pitch cannot quite catch us. That's about as much running in here as he manages to ever do. Quite frankly, I think the interview was with Charlie Austin.
I think so.
I don't know. I thought it was. I don't know what that situation's all about. But it was just like, at one point I think Charlie Austin actually said, so because he said he was 100%, he was 100% behind the manager, and Charlie goes, "Is the rest of the team?" And he went, the rest of the team's behind him as well. And I was like, well, first of all, what a ridiculous question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
But secondly, now we're in a situation where we've got professional footballers running podcasts with other professional footballers, and those professional footballers. Was it what was it about, Mitch?
It's for a betting site, mate.
Right.
Well, I don't know what the background to it is, but it was. I believe it was a betting site that was all over it in terms of advertising. Something which I personally, that's one of my issues, is betting sites and things in football. You'll have seen me on Twitter retweeting a good friend of mine who champions, anti-gambling stuff because of personal experience, and so and that's what it was about. I mean, it was
Steve?
I just dropped something on the floor. She's looking for it. I think the dog's coming in at her. She's found what she's looking for.
live on all fours.
Brilliant.
I know. Not often that happens, I tell you.
Sorry, Neil, I had to comment on that. I do apologise.
I'm getting the finger from the door now.
Brilliant.
Classic. Well, let Steve recover from that and watch out for rolling pins.
So even the door doesn't like you.
Well, the door's never like this. I've walked into it that many times. I know that for a fact. But getting back to it, I mean, I found the whole thing. I just
Neil was in the middle of a sentence that I interrupted him. Sorry.
No, I think Neil was taken aback as well. Go on.
The whole interview was full of curious things like that, though. Yeah. You know, he says he's big on stats. Is he? Well, he was telling when he had back-to-back wins when he'd forgot two games he'd lost in between.
Yeah.
You know, if that's a stats man, I'd like to see it. You can tell he's not a details man because he had that bloody badge on his coat upside down for about 6 weeks. You know, and there was just other little bits and bobs about how he's man managing's better. What? Because he lets you get away with murder.
Yeah,
he'll not bollock you when you don't put a shift in training. You know, it is that's what his perspective of man management and good man management is. Yes, am I being treated, in my opinion, better than the way I was? Well, yes, I'm getting away with murder a bit more.
I think there was one point, wasn't there, Mitch, where he said that he quoted another player as saying he was the best man manager he worked under, and he was great. And I thought to myself, didn't that player get suspended for about 9 months for drug taking? And I thought, yeah, that was good. You worked that worked well for your son. You know, he looked after you there, didn't he? You know, absolutely crazy.
I was just thinking about the comment there about Shelby but running, you know, and if you remember, I quoted the stats from BT Sport about the Everton game where 4 out of the top 5 players for running were Newcastle players. Guess what? Shelby wasn't one of them.
True.
You know, in terms of the distance covered in the match, and look, the Steves and Neil, I've mentioned before, there are all too many games where Shelby looks like he's running up and down a trough in the middle of the pitch, which is filled with treacle. You know, and he's like a super tanker. He cannot turn quickly, he cannot run quick, and I'm afraid to say that there is no place in the modern game for a player who likes to ping a pass 60 yards and then stand back and admire it. You know, and I'm sorry, that seems to me largely his game at the moment. You know.
Yeah, it does. It does.
He spends his time as well looking for the Hollywood pass, which comes off maybe he's 1 in 6. And to be fair to him, when it does, he can play a balls that not many people can. But he's constantly looking for it. When sometimes the simple and easy ball is totally the right thing to do, and that irks me a lot because it tells me he's thinking about self first, not team. And
you know what?
And
I think he's the only player, Mitch, that I know when he walks onto St James's Park, and in the first 5 minutes, you know what the next 85 is going to bring.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
You just know. You can just tell by the body language in that first 5 minutes what you're going to get out of John Joe Shelby during the game.
Which John Joe's rocking up today.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that one. Great.
Yeah. The first pass goes astray and his game's gone. You just see it. The second pass goes astray and his game's gone. By the time the third pass has gone astray, you might as well hook him there and then. I know that the young Hudson-Odoi got hooked after coming on as a substitute. But you know what? There are times when I think after that first 5 minutes, hook Shelby now, because I know that we're not going to get anything for the next 85.
Yeah, that was strange. It was strange. That wasn't it to see Odoi. I mean, I've never seen anything like that for a long time. But when it happens, it's really embarrassing for a player. But yeah, you're right. Steve Bruce would never have the gumption to do that.
Did you notice Thomas Tuchel though when he was interviewed after the game? He says, "Tomorrow it'll be forgotten." I'll bet it wasn't.
But I tell you what's interesting though. That's a manager who's only been there for 5 games. And he already feels confident enough in himself, in his own style of management, that if he sees something on the pitch that's not going right, he'll sort it out there and then. He's not waiting for 20 months, is he?
No.
You know, a lot of people going on about the Amanda Staveley court case. Chris McCarthy saying she didn't get compensation. She didn't, mate. I'm not sure who Rafa has got is. It must be a Twitter account, but I'm afraid she didn't get any compensation from that today.
But I've also seen, Steve, people saying, "Oh well, but it would have affected the takeover. She'd won all that money. She could have gone it alone with the Rubens, and that was never going to happen. Never going to happen. Get that idea out of everybody's head, and you should have had it out of your head weeks and months ago, because we've been saying it for ages. That the money won on that was never going to be bundled into a takeover ever. That was never the plan, and they have said that themselves clearly, and in the past, if you dig through past comments when it's been made." And so to start getting frustrated and angst-laden over a court case that has nothing to do with the takeover, because it could have affected the takeover, well, it would never have. If they were sitting popping a cork and a bottle of champagne, toasting their newfound wealth today or not, it would not have gone into the pot for a takeover.
No.
Yeah. Okay, let's go political, Ian, now that you're here. The whole Khashoggi thing has raised its head again. Joe Biden, obviously the new incumbent of the White House, has made it quite clear how he feels about that situation, and that's hit the headlines. And of course, once again, the Twitter timeline has gone mental at Newcastle United's end, because people think again that is going to have an effect on any proposed takeover between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's PIF and Newcastle United's. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, put it this way, Joe Biden's comments has brought about a certain amount of political pressure on the British government in terms of licenses for arms sales to the Saudi Arabian regime. But it doesn't look like they're reacting to that, frankly. That they're digging their toes in. So, therefore, from a British perspective, I don't think it changes anything at all. I think everybody knew before he was elected that Joe Biden would take that sort of stance, and it had to come out eventually. But so, therefore, it's a political reality of life.
Yeah, it's something which is gonna continue. I think the reports I saw today, Steve, were that this might not take place, with Biden and his administration until potentially September. Well, I'd like to think, God, and I mean, I remember saying this last year, but I'd like to think the takeover is going to be done and dusted or forgotten all about, by then, and that's going to be completely academic to what's going on. I mean, the only thing we should be worried about is arbitration, when it's starting, and how that pans out, and then if it all pans out and there's some kind of mediation can happen, and people can all shake hands and move on, that our takeover is going to get given permission. So that I would like to think that it's probably got nothing to do with it.
I don't think it has, Steve, to be perfectly honest. I think what was interesting, if there was anything that was interesting out of this so-called announcement by the Biden administration, it was the bit that said we're going to talk to King Salman. And I thought, oh, right, so we're bypassing the son and we're going straight to dad. So unlike what happened with Trump, where everything was done with the Crown Prince who's been Crown Prince put in there by his dad since 2017, and they've just gone, you know what? No, we're going to talk ruler to ruler here, and that kind of in a way that's politics, and that's also a little bit of political maneuvering. It's the Biden administration kind of distancing himself from Mohammed bin Salman, talking to him, because ultimately, if he remains as Crown Prince, then there will be conversations that the American administration will have to have with him, leader to leader. But at the moment, they've just bypassed and they're just going, we'll talk president to king, and that's it. And that's in political terms, that's an important statement to make on its own. And I'm sure Ian would agree with me to either a greater or lesser extent, because that's the way that politics normally happens.
Well, let's not also forget, by the way, that from an economic and financial perspective, that whatever the Saudi Arabian government and the Saudi Arabian hierarchy have got in the bank, they better make the most of it, because the world dependency on oil is going to drop dramatically in the next 15 to 20 years. So that isn't a long time scale in historical perspectives. So therefore, I think Biden's already looking towards that in terms of trying to green the American economy. Now, thing is, greening the American economy is no mean feat, by the way, you know, because the dependency on oil in the American economy is just bloody huge. But from that perspective, you can see already, you know, that they're getting towards a time where they don't see Saudi Arabia from the perspective of it being a producer as being that important in the long term.
Yeah. What they also did, Ian, was that they also reaffirmed their relationship with them with regard to the security of the Middle East.
Yeah.
So there's all these balls being juggled, you know, and us mere football fans are looking to see whether one of those balls that's being juggled happens to be black and white. And you know, we're not seeing them any at the moment. And that's because those balls are not in the game. You know, this is purely something that's way beyond Newcastle United football club.
I've got a funny feeling that considerations about the Newcastle United takeover weren't even a footprint in the State Department's briefings to the president. Like,
that's right. The only football they know is the one that they carry around in a briefcase, quite frankly.
Hopefully my volume's getting a bit better. I'm sure you guys can hear us, but the people out there seem to be struggling tonight, so I'm not sure why. I'll get to the bottom of that in some way, shape or form. But if there was one person guaranteed to say that, it was going to be you. So yeah, I mean, look, it's just been a hell of a week, and you know, but we tend to forget about the football and start concentrating too much on the politics. And John Ball used to play in goal for Felon. Good pal of mine. He says, what's your views on the fans calling for Darlow to be replaced by Dubravka? Not for me, says John. Now, John's in the goalkeeping union, and goalkeepers do tend to stick together. And I've got to be honest, I've stuck by Darlow all the way through this whole argument, but even I turned last night and said, maybe it is time to put Dubravka back in the nets. What's your take, Steve?
Well, I'm in the opposite part of that camp, as you know, and I've said for weeks and weeks on this show that Darlow's your number one. You have a number one goalkeeper and then a number two goalkeeper. And that there's a reason why someone is called your number one. And if that person goes out injured, when he comes back fit, he comes back in as your number one. And your whole team should be built. And the number two position is there to produce the goods while the number one is out. And it's not a case of, right, well, you're now both number ones and you're both competing. Right? So I've said for weeks that the minute that Dubravka was fit, he should have come back in, and I'm sticking with that. And it just so happens that because the results haven't been going our way, even though Darlow's performances, although they may have tailed off recently, and there's been one or two people pointing errors for, you know, let's say the Man United goal. Some people now looking at his distribution. Some people looking at his the way that he manages his box or coming out and punching or whatever it happens to be. But in my perspective, in the game, that it's a unique position, and it's the position where you declare at the start of the season who your number one goalkeeper is, and unless his form drops off dramatically, and not necessarily just an injury, but his form drops off dramatically, and you feel as though you need to make a change, that number one remains.
Aye.
Yeah. What's your take on it, Mitch? Would you start Dubravka the weekend?
I made it quite clear a couple of weeks ago. Your number one goalkeeper is your number one goalkeeper for a reason. And when he's fit, he plays. We've not had a declared situation like you get in some American football teams where they talk about having a 1A and a 1B running back, and the ride with a hot hand. Whoever's performing best in the first quarter of the game will usually get the majority of the snaps for the rest of the game, and it's done on a game by game basis. This is not a situation like that. You've got a number one keeper. You've got a number two keeper, and the number two keeper has really done well. He's really stood in, upped his game, performed well, but his form has started to dip, and one number one keeper is fit, and he should be in. It's that simple. And I'm glad you didn't come to me on the whole MBS report and things like that, because I think I'd have probably done an hour on it all alone. Myself, mate.
Well, to be honest, I got lost off with the comment coming from Ian, so I've completely looked that up.
Let's stick with keepers for now. We'll come back to it. Maybe.
We'll come back to it. Get yourself in the right frame of mind. Get yourself another drink, lad. Ian, your take on Dubravka Darlow?
Well, I think I'm in the same place as Mitch and Steve. I mean, I think I said a number of weeks ago that I thought Darlow's days numbered as number one. And frankly, if there had been any cojones as regards the management, the change would have been made already, you know. So I just think that Darlow had a really good spell when he took over and when Dubravka got injured, but I don't think that really good spell has actually continued through the last 4 or 5 games. And I think that we're now crying out to get Dubravka back, and I just don't know why Steve Bruce. Well, sorry, I do know why, but it's difficult to understand why that you keep a better keeper out of the team when the replacement keeper is not performing at the level that even he has been capable of. Never mind is at the level that Dubravka is capable of. So I think the change is overdue.
Yeah, you know what I would say, guys. The only time I can recall this happening at Newcastle with two keepers in this type of situation was probably the Shaka Heslop and Pav situation, where they chopped and changed. We got like 4 or 5 games or a run, and it did neither of them any good.
And maybe it's also Tommy Wright and Gary Kelly for a little while.
Yeah,
did the same thing. They had like you say, exactly 4 or 5 games, and they never really made a mark, and that upsets the back four as well, because different keepers have different styles and different ways of communicating. And so, you're just used to somebody who's going to bollock and scream at you and doesn't care if he clatters you when he comes out the 6-yard box to get the ball, to somebody who maybe instructs his defence a little differently, and it's going to create problems. And so I guess on the flip side, that gives a bit of an elbow to Darlow to stay in place. But it comes back to who is my number one keeper. Everybody in the dog knows who my number one keeper is, and he's fit. So why isn't he in the team?
Yeah.
Chris Marshall asks if Ashley remains into next season and will stay up, what happens in the summer, Steve? 7 players out of contract that need replacing. Do you think Ashley will spend?
No.
Which league are we going to be in? The first thing I would say
is he going to be here? But it's a rhetorical question. Is he going to be here?
Is he going to be here? Let's say the rhetorical answer is based on yes, he is still here. First of all, there's an awful lot of us won't be. I know that for a fact. There's plenty. The only salvation will be the fact that people are so bored and so lost for anything to do and so desperate to get out that they'll fill St James's Park regardless. But I think there's an awful lot of people totally disheartened and totally out of touch or out of kilter with what's going on and disappointed that they probably would turn around and go, you know what, I'm not even going to bother now. Certainly not if Bruce is running the team. So there's that. The counter side being that we're so desperate to get out of the house on a Saturday afternoon that we will be at St James's Park, and I'm sure an awful lot of people, because we've always gone on about loyalty and we've always talked about, this best supporters in the world situation, and we'll turn up and watch the grass grow and all of these sort of things, But will he spend if we go down and he's still there? He'll want to do something to make sure we get back in the league. The question is, which of those players that we've currently got in the squad will be there? Who's he going to have to replace? How's he going to replace them, and who's he going to replace them with? We've got players there who were there, likes of Lascelles, the last time we went down, and was an awful lot younger and an awful lot more vocal then than he is now, and shouting and bawling and telling people what they need to do in the changing room. I don't think he's got the cojones anymore to actually, or the willingness to stand up and do that anymore. I'm certainly not seeing it on the pitch. So I'm beginning to think, well, what are we going to have? Are we going to have a load of youngsters? Are we going to have a clear out, and some of those young players are going to get opportunities? Because quite frankly, if Steve Bruce isn't willing to blood youngsters in the Premier League, when he was sitting at 19, 20 points, and we were 10 points clear of the relegation zone, there's absolutely no chance of him doing it with the likes of the Longstaffs or Anderson or any of the other youngsters if we happen to be in the Championship, where it's kill or cure, isn't it?
And wasn't Elliot Anderson's Instagram post through the week quite telling?
Yeah.
Go on.
I don't know.
Remind
if
me.
you saw it. He posted about the quote about if you're good enough, you're old enough.
Yeah.
And that would suggest to me he's been told something by somebody within that managerial group, possibly even the manager himself, that no, you're too young.
Yeah.
You know, why would he randomly post something like that? That seems odd. Really does
While
seem
Manchester
odd.
United bring on a 16, just turned 17-year-old in a UEFA Cup game who's from the northeast and used to be at Hebben and then spent a little bit of time at Wallsend.
Exactly. It's ridiculous, isn't it, man?
What's your take? What's your take on that then? I mean, if 7 players out of contract, we've got to sign players, Mitch.
Yeah, but there's one big X factor that nobody knows. Nobody knows. There's so much money disappearing out of the game at this period in time. There are so many clubs who are financially struggling. And you're talking Barcelona, you're talking Inter Milan. You're not talking Chesterfield. You're not talking, Hartlepool, Darlington. You're not. You're talking big clubs. I think the face of the transfer window in the summer is going to be significantly different while players scramble around to get the best deals they can wherever they can. Because there is not going to be the money there to finance a big transfer merry-go-round. It ain't. Because it starts at the top and then does still roll down a little bit. It doesn't roll down the way it should. The thing that's kept Liverpool's books rosy for the last few years have been big name sales to Barcelona and clubs like that. That's not going to happen this summer. The thing that's that's kept certain clubs in business has been their ability to wheel and deal with the transfer market, like Southampton, for example. That's not going to happen.
But Mitch, before this COVID, in the last financial year, the 2019-2020 financial year, in the championship alone, they were spending 108% of turnover on players' wages.
It's ridiculous.
And it's a completely and utterly unsustainable model, which has now been shown into stark relief by the COVID crisis and by the lack of gate receipts.
Yes.
And therefore, even with the significant bailout packages which have gone into the lower echelons, but which are not enough, by the way, in order to bail them out.
It just kicks the can down the road another 18 months.
But I think what you're going to get from the perspective of football being a market in England is a significant market correction, and that might actually mean clubs going to the wall and players looking for clubs like hell, scrambling like hell to look for clubs.
I genuinely think we're not sitting factoring stuff like that in when we're sitting talking about what happens in the summer, because we still don't know from what's been released by the government this week. Are we going to have full grounds for the start of next season?
Well, unlikely.
And you're shaking your head. You're right. Yeah, I think it's unlikely and all.
Yeah,
I think it's unlikely and all. And so these problems are now going to be sustained further. That's going to put more pressure on clubs financially. What was it, the figure for the 72 Football League clubs that they were losing collectively 25 million a month or something like that?
Yeah. Oh, it's worse than that. I think honestly,
I think it probably has got worse than that now. And so when you're talking transfer markets in the summer, it could be a bloody great big free-for-all somewhere. Like you say, there could be clubs disappearing, players scrambling for places. You never know what you're going to have the pickings of. And so, it's going to be interesting. I would love to see we'll have a smart recruitment team in place to take advantage of that. Don't everybody laugh at the back. Because I wish we did have a smart recruitment team like that, because they should be lining their ducks up now, because we're going to free up a large bit of wage cap with some of those players who are going out of contract. And that's significant. That could work to our advantage if we're smart enough.
Sorry, I was just going to say there'll also be other corrections in the market. For instance, the TV revenue market will be a correction, because a huge amount of the TV revenue coming from pubs and clubs can't be at the level that it is now, because the capacity inside those establishments will not be anything like it is before the lockdowns occurred. So you're talking about clubs and pubs where the turnover is going to be massively reduced, and they wouldn't be able to afford the existing tariff from Sky, BT, and all the rest.
If you look at football money in the game, generally, BN have ditched France. They didn't bother bidding for Germany. Outside of England, in Europe, some of those leagues are going to be desperate for cash. The French clubs are now already squeaking. And you're going to see players released from them left, right, and centre over the summer, I'm quite sure. Look, I'll give you an example of how that's happening out here. The pub where we meet, Liberty Belgian Motor City, John, the manager, was a cracking lad. He finally got it back open after being closed for months. And then his bosses turned around and said, "Oh, can't afford to put the B in yet. No, we can't afford that subscription." And that's going to happen across Europe. Thankfully, he was able to wrestle the money out of them to say, "Hey, one of the main reasons people come to this pub's to watch football. I need it on at least one screen." But you're right. That's going to affect pubs and clubs across Britain. There's no doubt about that. Because Sky certainly probably don't shy away from asking for a pretty penny for a commercial license to show their games in a pub. No. Gone are the days of using some white sticky tape to put a pint glass on the corner of the screen to pretend that you're not using a home subscription in the pub. These problems are real, and the knock-on effects are quite significant. And the money from the game's just it's disappearing already, and people don't seem to realise that. It seems to be the thing it's almost like the elephant in the room that people don't want to admit.
Yeah, we've got some crazy things happening though, haven't we? We've got the National League 1 and National League 2, as I call them, the North and South. We've got them voting to abandon their league and cancel it. We've got some teams within that suddenly going, "Oh, well, can we have our own mini league?" Because the National League itself has not come out and declared, or has come out and declared, that they're still expecting their league to finish and that promotional relegation will still occur. So now you've got half a dozen teams in North and half a dozen teams in South now suddenly wanting to carry on with the league in their own little mini league to play as a sort of extended playoff situation. So you've got that. You've got teams in Division 2 are going, whoa, hang on. We don't necessarily want to have relegation, and again, that's something that Neil and I spoke about back in, I think it must have been October, if not earlier, where we said the best thing that could happen would be if National League and National League South and National League North were forgotten about, not as in the leagues themselves, but in terms of promotion, relegation, allow them to get their finances in order, allow them to have a steady, settled state, because at the end of the day, those clubs are all they're all desperate for the league to finish so they can hire all their players on furlough. And then for Leagues 1 and 2 to have the stability of knowing that was going to be no relegation out of Division 2, and there was going to be no promotion relegation, and basically just carrying on and generating the income. And then that allowed something to happen in the Championship, which we know ultimately the way things are going will end up as some kind of Premier League 2. But we're in a situation where the 18 teams league in the Premier League will come about. There's no question in my mind that the 18 team, it'll be reduced from 20 to 18 by 2023-24. That's almost a given, because with the extension of the European leagues and the introduction of what is now going to be a third European league, which is this crazy sort of European conference leagues, which is going to encourage clubs in places like Cyprus and in Ireland and to a greater or lesser extent Scotland to get involved in European football again. So European football is going to extend from something like 125 to 225 games a season. And the domestic leagues cannot handle it. We have not got the calendar to be able to fit it in. So you need those reductions. And this is why the whole Project Big Picture that was spoken about, that was being pushed by the likes of Manchester United and Liverpool from their sort of USA-centric mind, because they saw it something else. This is where the Champions League and UEFA, they got a hold of it and went, no, there's no way we want the Super League. But what they're doing is they're cherry picking the best bits that they liked about it and going, well, we'll just encompass that into the Champions League, and that's what we'll do, and encompass a little bit of it into the Europa League, and we're going to reorganise the Europa League and bring in a third league. You know,
if you notice, every time UEFA mess around with their competitions, it's always around about the time where there's strong rumours circulating about the European Super League. And they're spending that time tummy rubbing and looking after the little egos that the big European clubs that they want to have in their premium competitions all the time, because it's great for their revenue. When they brought FFP in, right, and they said they were going to ban certain teams from entering European competition if they broke their FFP rules and what have you. And at that time, we know Real Madrid were busy selling their training ground to the state for exactly the same amount as that debt was. You know, and you had Barcelona being bailed out by the Catalan banks on some sort of buy the training ground and use it on a peppercorn rent of about something like €1 a month or something stupid like that, right? You had all of that going on. Do you know the only club that got banned for going into the Champions League under FFP? Red Star Belgrade. Why? Because they were a former winner of the competition and they could hold them up as a shining example, a little scapegoat. It was dead easy to turn on little Red Star Belgrade. you know, a former glorious European team, and they could hold them up as the example about how they were making FFP work, because we've stopped the former winner of this competition from joining it because of FFP, when all sorts of crazy shit was flying around like that, what Barca and Real Madrid were doing. They do it all the time. Anytime there's these rumblings about Super League, UEFA start to panic and they drop that bait and they start to tweak with the leagues and they start to try and appease them and qualifying for the Champions League on historical, on a historical basis. Well, I tell you what, we should have a bit of that, because we should be in ahead of Leicester.
And Tottenham.
And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. UEFA have always had this coefficient tweak, and again, they change how they calculate your European coefficient just to make sure that Barcelona and Inter Milan and Real Madrid are always sort of up there. It's crazy.
It is
absolutely crazy.
Crazy as how quickly time passes doing this show as well, by the way. And as always, we have our regular sections, as you know, and we're going to start this week, I think, with Tweet of the Week. So as always, Steve Hasty sits by his computer religiously and picks out tweets of the week. So here we go. Here's the first one.
There you go. Steve Bruce showing Miggy how it's done. One of the finest films you've ever seen. Kes. And that marvellous scene where Bobby Charlton took the penalty after diving. I'll never forget going to watch that film at the cinema. And I just thought that was great, because there's little skinny Kes, the little lad with the kestrel, and
was it Ian Glover?
Ian Glover was the school teacher, Ian. And
Brian Glover, I think.
Brian Glover, sorry, yeah. And you remember the scene where he got brought down for the penalty. He died, got himself a penalty, and then what he did was he took the penalty and the kids saved it. So he made him. He had to take it again till he scored. And I just thought, when I saw that,
the keeper moved.
Exactly, yeah, encroached. You're not allowed to come off the line. Stuck in the mud. I tell you what, Steve, it's been a difficult week, mate, because digging out all the bile that's been going on that NUFC comment stuff. So this one from Paul Oxley, watching Newcastle go during lockdown is seriously bad for your health. Think whatever channels we are on in the future need to have one of those red triangle warnings that you used to get back in the day on Channel 4 for a horror show. It's like watching a horror show, watching NUFC. And I thought, you know what? You're right, Paul. You're absolutely right. I like that one. I thought that was a good one. And then Le Louvre, like Bruce this Saturday, 18:45. It's good. We've gone European times here, you notice. Come on, lads. Playing hard, first tackle, yeah. Leave it all on the pitch. I may have the body of a weak and feeble cabbage, but I have the heart of the lion in the Wizard of Oz. A horse, my kingdom for a horse. I like that one. I thought that was a good one.
But the winner, and the clear winner is...
NUFC Australia. Anyone else noticed that Lee Charlie has a striking resemblance to a thumb?
Yeah, he does.
Little bit of artistic work there. I thought really good. It came all the way from Oz. I like that one. I thought I would just take a look, because at the end of the day, Steve, we need to put a smile on our faces, because, like I say, the NUFC Twitter feed has been horrible over the last few weeks, but certainly over the last week again. And I don't know why. I don't know what people get out of it, why they're like that. But for some reason, it seems to be the boredom sets in, and they just want to all have a go at each other. And there's no need for it. They need to grow up, quite frankly. Some people out there, but at least we've got some fans out there who still see the humorous side and appreciate the humorous side of what Twitter should be about, and just having a bit of a laugh and a joke and putting a smile on other fans' faces. And hopefully, we've shown a few tonight.
Great stuff. Well, here we go. Tweet of the week. Well done, NUFC Australia. Lots and lots of comments coming in, and lots of people want to talk about the MBS stuff, etc. We did cover it at the start of the show. Non-league football. Let's go down that route, Stephen. We've talked a little bit about it. It is a bit strange to see certain games still being allowed to go ahead. The FA Trophy games still going ahead, but other leagues just basically wiped out once again, 2 seasons in a row, and it's those clubs that are getting hit the hardest, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that a lot of the owners and a lot of the committees were, in one respect, were desperate for to just have a decision made, one way or the other. And ultimately, a decision has been taken out of their hands in some respects. I know the likes of South Shields probably wanted games to carry on because they're a well-run club and they've been doing very, very well. And other clubs like Mort was probably exactly the same at that level. But you get the situation as it flashed across the screen there with Darlington, and their league's over, but they're still in a cup competition. How do the lads manage it? I mean, from a fitness point of view, from an organisational point of view, from the club itself, and what the club has to put in and dedicate itself to actually continue to run itself, just for what could ostensibly be one more game that they've probably waited weeks and weeks and weeks to put on as well. So it's an absolute crazy situation that we've found ourselves in, and it's the lack of any proper organisation, any proper distinct direction coming from the football league and from the powers that be. And we've always slagged off the FA as a bunch of suits, but I think the owners of clubs it's got to come from them. There's no leadership. That we said it, and Mitchell, remember we said it a few months ago now, that and we had spoken at length from last January with some guys who were involved and knew exactly what the situation that was going to happen and what was going to come to a head. And he said they'll all eat themselves. They'll all stab each other in the back. Because that's the nature of football. That's the nature of everybody. They'll act collectively to get the TV money, but everybody acts separately when it comes to what they'll do with that TV money, what the impact that TV money will have on each of them as a club. And you look at yourself. Well, it's the I'm all right, Jack situation, and it's come to bite football big style on the backside. And when I say football, I mean the whole football factory, if you want to call it that. And it's sad. It really is sad. There are clubs out there that are still making money because they use themselves as car parks and stuff like that. But a lot of these clubs were surviving on the 200 people that went through the door. And, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, and we'll probably laugh when we think of 52,000 at St. James's Park, but that revenue of that 200 people plus what they spend in the bar has kept those clubs going for, in some instances, over 100 years, and these are the community clubs. I know we talk about, Newcastle being a community or a value to the community and the stadiums and things like that. But the real community clubs are your Heaton Stands and your Dunstan Feds and your Gatesheads and your Blythe Spartans and we could rattle them off. We've talked about Darlington. They were probably a little bit bigger than the situation that they find themselves in at the moment. But that was because of poor management. Again, in the past, it was allowed to happen. It's quite ironic as well, isn't it, when you think of the football authorities looking at owners and directors tests, but once you start running a football club, once you get past that, you can basically do whatever you like with it. It's just it's shambolic. It really is, and there's no real direction, is there, Ian? There's no political direction. The DCMS, the talk a good talk, but we're not getting the walk. We're not getting the support. And I don't think they understand what it is that potentially we're going to lose. We get all the words, but we're not getting the actions, and it's really, really sad.
Well,
what do you think, Ian?
I'm afraid to say that the Secretary of State for the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, frankly, wouldn't know a non-league football ground if one came and landed on them. Frankly, and. Look, I've supported football, Newcastle United, but also Gateshead for, and look, I've neglected me Gateshead support for far too long. Just out of, I'm a season ticket holder at Newcastle, and frankly, I just haven't got time to do them both, but I mean, I've been all over the country with Gateshead, and I've been on league grounds, all across the whole of the northeast of England and all over the country, places like Yeovil, Dover, and everywhere in between. And the thing is, I think we're in a sad situation where you've got a government that don't understand that grassroots level. They don't understand the passion. They don't understand the need in the community importance of these institutions. That's what they are. They're institutions in each locality, because it's a working class sport, and it isn't important to them. Now, possibly with the emergence of Conservative MPs and the so-called red wall seats, there might be a change of heart. But I'm not convinced about that, and I don't want to get party political on here. But I'm not convinced that Oliver Dowden or even his sports minister, Nigel Huddleston, really fundamentally understand the breadth of the problem, the depth of the problem, which is facing these local institutions in terms of non-league clubs. I don't know why I thought of this. But as soon as we started talking about non-league football, I thought about Laurie McMenemy. And does anybody remember the story when Laurie McMenemy was Sunderland's manager, and he started off the season by saying we're heading for the playoffs, and they did head for the playoffs. They got to the playoffs, but it was the wrong ones at the wrong end. Right. Anyway, after the relegation, I heard a story that Laurie had been walking along Fawcett Street in Sunderland and had taken a funny turn and passed out, and some people from a building society had took him inside and sort of put him on a chair and were fanning him and giving him a drink of water and that, and saying, Mr. McMenemy, are you all right? And he goes, where am I? And they said, you're in the Alliance. And he goes, Jesus, what happened? Did they have 6 divisions?
Brilliant. We need to do Ian's comedy section, I think. Mitch, how do you follow that?
Well, you can you really? It's interesting. There's two levels here. One, you've got a feel for the teams because they're playing in different competitions run by different governing bodies. That suddenly they're not playing a league competition, but they've got to keep going in a cup. And it's not just in England. If you look, there was a situation I think in January in Germany. There was a lower league team. It got to the quarter-final to the German Cup, and they were playing somebody like Bayer Leverkusen, and they hadn't played a game in over 180 days. Right. It's like, how the hell can you get up and organised and fit for that? And that's crazy, and it just highlights, even in somewhere like Germany, there's no coordination between the governing bodies about how you're going to manage a situation like that. Clubs are inevitably struggling, and there's no sort of cohesive, organised structure to try and help the clubs. The clubs are just being thrown to the wolves, and if they're a well-managed club, then happy days. And if they're not a well-managed club, then, well, bye-bye. And nobody seems to care. And I get the argument. I mean, one of the guys, Steve and I, that Steve was referring to, we did a load of work with not so long ago. He said that has to happen. His attitude was it has to happen. Those clubs that are financially irresponsible need to be allowed to go and get those owners out of the game and start all over again. But that's really hard for the communities who rely on some of those clubs, who, the clubs sometimes still the heartbeat of the local community. And I used to love to go to a non-league game here, there, or anywhere. I'd be that coming back from an away trip with Newcastle. I'll be that if we didn't have a game going somewhere to take in some football. And there's got to be a way to get back to that eventually, hopefully. You hope the clubs there's enough of the clubs still around, but it's a bit of a shambles. And then higher up the leagues, like Steve was saying about the League One and League Two teams, sort of the ability to eat themselves and stab each other in the back was apparently clear when they were taking this vote about do we finish the season or not. And you had whose owner is it that lives out here? Is it Peterborough's owner lives out here? And he had an absolutely massive rant about the clubs that were voting to end the league, which basically stopped their chances of doing anything. And it was everybody who wanted to cozy up and create that daft 8-team playoff that Mackems were championing. And it just shows you that when push comes to shove, there's a massive inability for owners and clubs to see the bigger picture and to ride it out together, because it's now with the announcement about, we're still not clear about who's going to go into who's going to be allowed into grounds and at what level and how many. That's what's going to kill the lower league clubs and the non-league clubs.
I tell you what's interesting, Mitch. You look at I'm looking at here. I've put up the National League North, and poor Blythe are sitting bottom of the league with only 6 points after 14 games. Top of the league, Gloucester, National League North.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
What?
Yes.
I don't know about you, but
which bit of the North is that?
I know that we went to the same school, Ian, but even our geography teachers weren't that bad. But they would be able to convince us that Gloucester was in the north. There's no way Mr. Bogey convinced you that Gloucester was in the north. I can tell you now.
What? No Bogey? No Bogey,
yes. There's no way he couldn't convince you of that. He just certainly couldn't convince me of it,
But unfortunately, that is symptomatic of what's actually happened in terms of the riches in football across the country and the north-south thing. And what's actually happened is the Northern Territory has had to creep south because of the predominance of southern clubs with money creeping up the leagues and northern clubs going out of business and then coming back in, but coming back in at lower levels. and that's what's actually happened with that sort of periodically over a lot of time is that the northern sections crept south as northern clubs have gone out of business and southern clubs with me have come in and have had to backfill. And unfortunately, it's that sort of south of the Midlands and the south. You know, it's amazing how many times I've actually been to places where you know, cup competitions have been organised on regional basis, and you're going like 300 miles. You know, and that's because of the predominance of, if you like, sort of take a line from the Wash to the Bristol Channel, below that now, they have just, those clubs there have just come up and populated all of those league structures, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I see.
I'll give you a very palpable example. I think I mentioned it on the show before. A mate of mine moved down to Truro, and some millionaire property developer with a dodgy Ukrainian wife bought Truro, and he got them promoted through, I think it was something like 5 levels in 6 seasons. And it got to a certain point where teams were refusing to travel all the way there.
Yeah,
they would rather forfeit the game than pay the travel expenses to take everybody there and get them back. And they had to restructure, I think, 2 or 3 divisions along the north-south. And you're right, it's exactly that line. It's the Bristol Channel all the way up the Wash. That's now the south.
Yeah.
And so it says, right, it's an absolute nonsense, Steve, to have Gloucester top of the National League North.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I know from following Dunstan, you know, the hours that we've got to put in normally to get the games. I mean, our opening game when we went into that National League was Marine away. You know, and at least 5 of the games I think we played that season were all in Liverpool. So it's unbelievable, you know. But yeah, it's the way that the league was structured. Do you want my honest opinion as to why the league was structured like that? Because there was too many northeastern teams winning the FA Vars, and that's why they restructured the pyramid. Because the northeast teams were murdering everybody in that competition, and they don't like to see the north doing well.
But the trouble was, Steve, you see, when the pyramid was invented, the Northern League could have joined at the same level as the Northern Premier League, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they didn't, and so therefore, because they didn't, they became a feeder league, and so that, you know, the pyramid would have had 4 prongs underneath what became the conference. You know, you had the Eastern League, the Southern League, and the Northern Premier League underneath the conference, and the Northern League could have been the 4th prong, but they refused to join, and that's ancient history, but that's had a big impact upon that. Yeah. That decision, you know.
There's no doubt the restructuring though hasn't helped, and you know there was no surprise that it was the first time there wasn't an all northeast, you know, final essentially when the first restructured it, Ian.
I mean, I think what we've seen though as well is if you look at the league, look at the league, the 92 clubs, and look at the teams that were there in 1960 that aren't there now. You know, Gateshead, Workington, Hartlepool, you know, and there's lots and lots of clubs from the north, you know, north of the sort of M62 that were there, which aren't there now, you know, and so even the league itself, the football league, has crept south in that process, and that's been mirrored in the non-league non-league scenario.
Yeah, it has. Lots of people thoroughly enjoying the show tonight. Rafa Benitez has got says, forget about the current plight. Give us your thoughts on this fantasy. What if Rafa arrived in 2004 and inherited Sir Bobby's team? He just won the Spanish title and when Liverpool won the Champions League. Yeah, I mean, God, I mean, you know, you look at stuff like that and you think, well, yeah, it would have been great, wouldn't it? But it's all pie in the sky, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? We've always said that. It's that we could go back to the Bobby sacking, couldn't we? And we could talk about the manner in which it happened. You know, the arrival on the Monday, the poor man walking out with his golf clubs and sent to the 4 winds. I listened to on another podcast or an interview with John Carver where John said that it became pretty obvious that the manoeuvrings had happened weeks and weeks earlier, and that when Souness arrived, it became pretty obvious that he wasn't just arriving because of what had happened on the Monday. It had all been put in place well earlier than that, and this has always been the situation when Newcastle, you sack somebody and then you spend your time just rebuilding again and again and again, and you fall for the same old tricks. There's no continuity. There's no succession plan, and everybody thought the succession planning under Sir Bobby was. And I know that the lad said there, Rafa coming in, but we all thought the succession planning was going to be Bobby staying for another couple of seasons, and then perhaps Alan Shearer stepping in, and I don't know whether that was ever discussed, but it was certainly the thoughts on many fans who saw Alan's career coming towards its sort of hiatus and its end. And I'm sure that Alan would have loved that, if he had have spent a little bit of time and getting coaching badges and being able to do that. I always wish that the same had happened with Peter Beardsley and players like that, and that they had come in with proper roles within the football club, working with the first team and stuff. And I know we had Lee Clark who did come in at certain times under Roeder and then later on. But if the club, I could never understand why it was Souness, other than and the lads may agree, they may disagree, but somebody felt, and it's quite ironic having heard Jermaine Jenas during the week or at the end of the game on Saturday, that it was felt as though they needed some strong arm guy to come in, and Souness was seen as that man, and Souness was going to come in and kick butts. This was the Souness who had been a disaster at Liverpool, by the way, but somebody got it into the head, whether it was linked to agents or whether Douglas Hall was instrumental in it rather than Freddie, because from what my understanding was that Freddie was merely the one who did the deed. He wasn't the man who invented the deed. He was the man who was sent in as chairman and had to sack Sir Bobby. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that was my understanding. But why Souness? And the succession planning wasn't there. There'd be no succession planning. And I think, Mitch, you mentioned it a couple of weeks ago when people talked about, if Rafa was the man to come back. Right. And your immediate comment was, only if he's coming back with some succession planning in place where he's also going to have someone alongside that can take it forward,
Look, you talk about key decisions. The key decision for me was that Sir Bobby honoured his contract at Barcelona and didn't come.
Yeah.
That was the decision that threw any kind of succession plan out the window for me. I think that would have seen a significant change. But you're right about who thought Souness was a good idea.
Well, don't forget, I did tell you all the allegation that I heard, that story where that decision was made primarily with betting in mind. As I say, it is an allegation, and it's not a guaranteed proof, but the story has it that certain people sat round a table, had a look at what the odds were on potential managers of Newcastle, and certain businessmen in Newcastle went and put a vast amount of money on Souness, and then lo and behold, he was appointed at Newcastle. That's how he got the job. Not that I would ever cast any aspersions on anyone who used to be in charge at Newcastle, but that is how the rumour goes.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you believe Steve's idea that Souness was meant to be the hard man to sort out the dressing room and the aftermath of. It's like a modern day Bill McGarry scenario. Yeah. That's exactly what he was. He was meant to do that after the Richard Dennis era and player power and all the rest of it. So it's hard to believe, but I have to say, by the way, I think your idea with the big betting coach probably more accurate.
Yes.
Yeah, Bill Smith asks this one. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I do believe it's true. Bill Smith says, been reading about Gateshead's demotion from the Football League. Did Newcastle vote against them?
Who knows? I think it's a secret ballot, but you know, there is an awful lot of people who thought at the time that that Newcastle actually did vote against them, and of course, you know, being a Gateshead fan, what I remember is that I think it was the first time that Gateshead had to apply for re-election at the Football League in 37 years, and weren't even bottom; they were third bottom, and were voted out and were replaced by Peterborough United, and of course it was the southern clubs, but aided and abetted by other clubs in this neck of the woods, who allegedly who got rid of Gateshead. You know, and I mean, there were some clubs back then who were like perennial reappliers. You know, that applied every year and got back in. I think Crewe back then were one of the ones. Crewe Alexandra.
Just want to stop you there, Ian, because we did promise Dan Harrison at the start of the show that we would raise a glass, and this is to absent friends, and this is to Paul and Pete. Paul NUFC 1892 who watches the show, and at Toon Pete 85 who watches the show as well. And we just want to say, you know, we'll raise a glass to you. We know you've been through hard times in the last few weeks. We're there for you. We're all part of the community. But cheers to you guys, and you know, keep watching the show, but keep your spirits up as well.
Yeah,
and can I add a belated happy birthday to Billy Robson, one of my mates who was 80 this week.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Billy.
Your health, Billy.
Have a good one, mate. Have a good one. And yeah, unbelievable that we've now reached 7 o'clock. It does fly around on a Friday. Always got plenty to talk about. And as you know, we always have... Toon Look-alike, which Mitch picks, and I do look forward to these pictures coming through. I've got to be honest. This one is a belter.
It is a belter, isn't it? And I've got to thank Jamie Coxon who sent us it on Instagram, because frankly, that was where you found them two pictures. I never know, but cracking, absolutely
here we go.
Cracking.
Drum roll. Mark Knopfler and Mark Hodder.
The absolute. Hey, dear me. Separated at birth, them two, weren't they? Dear me.
Absolutely brilliant, that. Like, so, yeah, thanks to Jamie Coxon for helping you out on your mission to get your Toon Look-alike. Brilliant.
Brothers in arms.
Brothers in arms, Sultans of Swing, whatever you want to say. Yes, 100%.
I've never even noticed that.
As always as well, Steve Wraith does get a little bit of stick on Twitter. Steve Hasty has said it's been toxic, so we might as well chuck this in as well. Wow, yeah. Death threats this week. Don't worry, you'll get yours. Thanks very much to Gustavo Chebs for that message. Not quite sure why he would send that. Sporting Minute did stick up for us. He went, to be honest, this isn't cool. I'd delete it. I can't expect Steve to condemn abuse of others if it gets abuse and no one calls that out. So a big thank you to Sporting Minute. But yeah, Gustavo Chebs, you're tied this week though, mate, for somebody with a big imagination. And that's this guy. Yeah, Shay has said, I did put a little thing about Mackham's in a cup final. They must have had a slice of luck, and put a picture of Donald Trump eating a pizza backwards. But Shay then just put, suck your mother, you baldy. Yeah, okay, you get the rest. But thanks very much for that. One from Newcastle and one from Sunderland. I do like that music.
You know what? I don't think some people realise how. Aye, Chebs, aye. You know what? I don't think some people realise how bad it is. But you know, I've had attacks on my Twitter account. People trying to hack into it, and I'm not the only one. And I'm thinking to myself, why would somebody want to hack into my Twitter account? For God's sake, what's the world coming to? You know, when people are trying to hack into other people's accounts, not just once, I'm talking about 10 times in like a minute,
aye.
you know, and other people having 10 attempts. I'm getting other people that I know getting contact and saying it's happening to me at the same time. And what the hell's going on? And this is what Twitter's become. There's some mentalists out there who just don't want to play the game. They just don't want to be friendly. They don't want the banter. They just want to create and generate an atmosphere that is so toxic among the Twitterati of NUFC hashtag that it's beyond reproach, quite frankly. I'm just shocked by it at times, you know. I'm just completely shocked by it, Stephen. And I know you did the campaign, and I know you've kept it up, but I'm just wondering about the sanity of some of our fan base, and some of the people, or rather people who purport to be fans of Newcastle United, because that's what they are. They're not real fans, because they're just wanting to create problems and issues across the fan base for the sake of it, you know. They cannot be Newcastle fans. They cannot be, because there's no sense to it.
Yeah, it's annoying. I mean, Ian, you know, what I would say is, I mean, since you contributed to the documentary, Ian, you know, that we put out before Christmas, which has had, you know, nearly 7,500 views. The Chronicle picked up on it, decided not to come to us, which I found bizarre, but, you know, they picked on other fans to give their say on it, and highlighted a couple of people who were quite frankly laughed at as potential people who've been bullied online. I did find it rather bizarre. But anyway, forget about the people that are selected. At least it was being highlighted. That was the key. And, you know, I think personally for me it's got better. You know, I still get the odd one. I'm making a bit of a joke of it now. But at least there's some high profile names now starting to realise there's an issue. It's taken celebrities to be attacked, football players, you know, other people, you know, reality TV stars. We've seen journalists, we've seen high profile journalists like Piers Morgan now having a pop at it. So at least it's now getting more high profile. Eventually, you would imagine these social media companies are going to have to start looking at this more seriously.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, but the thing is, look, you know, obviously I'm an elected politician and MP, and you know I do attract some bail, you know. But the thing is, I try not to engage it, you know, because I think all that you do is there are people who are just out there to deliberately provoke, and therefore if you respond to it. All you're doing is you're giving them oxygen. So all I do is either ignore it, or if it just continues, I'll mute them, you know, and that's all you can do. That's all you can do, you know.
Yeah. Okay, well, we don't want to drag that out. We don't want to drag it out.
No.
I know what Mitch's views are on that as well. So, you know, I'm pretty sure that you know, we just all deal with it in the right way. If you want to block, you block. If you want to interact, you interact, and that's it. It's as simple as that. We all know what to do, and I do feel that as things pass on, you know, if the takeover goes through or if the takeover doesn't go through, you know, I think we'll just, you know, things will move on. But I think the takeover and the pandemics enhanced it, made it worse, and I think, you know, some people are stronger than others, and that's it. It's as simple as that. Lots of people, lots of comments. Thanks very much for them all tonight. Sorry we didn't get to all of them. Got about 20 minutes left. Evening, Stephen Cole. Loving the show. Can't wait to be back in the tune whenever we can. Yeah, Chris, look forward to seeing you, mate. Jamie says, thanks for the shout out on the tune Lucky Likey, Mitch. So that's your partner in crime. That's your partner in crime today. Well said, Ian, says Sean Clarney. And Martin says, in all walks of life, you get the odd knacker that wants a reaction. And Mark Henderson, where's his comment gone? He says, I wish we could mute Steve Bruce during a press conference. Yeah, not wrong. We did discuss that a little bit earlier on. Tom Dixon did ask earlier as well, why is Jackson Street closed, Ian? Just something work related?
It's because it's, you know, shopping on both sides, and it's to allow social distancing for people going into and out of the shops. And it, you know, Jackson Street is a shopping street in Gateshead, and that's entirely the reason. So, you know, it's about just allowing more space for people to be pedestrians, down the street until all this is over, which we hope is, fingers crossed, not too long.
Okay, as everyone knows, we do this competition every month, and it is provided to us by qtechshop.co.uk. Win something tasty with Hasty. This month we're giving you the opportunity to win £100 worth of JD Sports vouchers. Now, I'm lost off here, John. Is this the last night? And I didn't check with you today. I think it might be the last night. I'm not 100% sure. You better text us and let us know, because it's the end of the month, isn't it? This will be the last show of the month. I'm not 100% sure, so hopefully John is watching and he'll be able to clarify. But just to go back through the clues anyway, that was clue 1.
Yeah.
That was clue 2.
Yeah.
And this is the third clue. So, what does that mean? I'm completely bamboozled, I've got to be honest. Hoping that John is watching and he can clarify. But there you go. That's your 3 clues. Write them down. Take in whatever you can from them. And then hopefully before the end of the show, I'll be able to revisit them for you and get back to you and let you know if tonight is the final night or whether it's next week. It's next week.
I think
John's just got in touch there. He says it's next week. So it is next week. So you've got your 3 clues. Big shout out to Spider VPN, who have been our StreamYard application sponsors this week, and they are staying on next month, which is a big thank you to them. Big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend. And a big shout out to John from Jab Signature, who does all of our flyers. And the new website is up and running, NUFCmatters.com. Have a pop on there. T-shirts, etc. are all on there that we used to sell on the original site. We'll be really plugging that next week, and lots of new stuff on there. So have a look, NUFCmatters.com. If you're a first-time visitor to the channel, we've managed to increase the channel by 300 this week. So please click subscribe, please click like, and please click share. Just hit that little button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And a lot of it has been down to football, our build-up in community. But as a lot of you know, I do like to interview the odd character. And this week and next week, my exclusive interview with Charles Salvador, aka Bronson, is ongoing. It's interviews which I did with Charlie 5 years ago in Wakefield Cage. And I think you'll enjoy them. Even if you're not into crime, even if you're not into the criminal aspect of it, the interviews aren't really about crime and criminal aspect, because he wasn't a very good criminal. He spent most of his life he's messed most of his life behind bars, writing books, doing press-ups and getting into trouble behind bars. But fascinating interviews. Get yourself on them. I dare you to press on the first one and have a listen and tell us what you think. But nearly 10,000 views of the first interview in 2 days tells you that there's a lot of people interested in him, and it is an exclusive. So for the next 7 days, the rest of my interviews with him are going up, so have a look on. And don't forget, tomorrow, Match Day Live as well, 7:30, join me and the team as we talk you through that game. Should be interesting. Steve, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, has he been in jail for over 40 years, Steve?
He's done 45 years, with the exception of an 80-day period when he came out. But other than that, he's actually been away now for 26 years, of which 23 were in solitary confinement. So basically, the 23 years in solitary confinement were actually behind 2 cage doors, and he was fed through the door and was not allowed out of a cage for 23 years. Wasn't allowed out for exercise. He had to do all these ablutions inside, etc. So very interesting. I wrote a poetry book with him a few years ago, and this is how this interview started. We actually recorded the interview. We recorded the poetry together, and but then we managed to get a lot of stories and we put them out. So his original sentence, Geordie Jedi's asking, what was his original sentence? Was 7 years. He robbed a newsagent of £7.63, and he's been in jail for 45 years. Unbelievable story. Unbelievable. He's a big Tottenham fan. To be honest, when he rings us, we tend to speak football, and we often have a chat about Steve Bruce. And I says, I'd like to introduce you to Steve Bruce. He might run a mile.
on, Steve. He's a Tottenham fan. How come you never had him on the celebrity fan photographs the other night? Then how?
I know. I missed a trick.
You missed
that one.
I missed a trick, mate. I missed a trick. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but yeah, hey, fantastic, great stuff. So the next one is on tonight. You'll catch it on the playlist. Just look for Charles Bronson in the playlist. I'm sure you'll thoroughly enjoy it. Anyway, let's look ahead to the match at the weekend. I say look ahead. We tend not to look forward to these occasions, but it's an 8 o'clock.
Between my fingers like this.
It's an 8 o'clock kickoff live on Sky Sports. And as Steve Bruce said today, I always say when the Daffodils are up, the crux of the season is upon us. We've still got a lead. There are 6 or 7 teams involved, but it seems Newcastle are the only ones in it. Can we finish above them? That's the aim, and I'm quietly confident we can. And hence, Steve, with his Daffodils today.
They're looking good now. They've warmed up a little bit, the warmth of the room, I think. They're looking good.
Fantastic.
It's St. David's Day on Monday, so you'll need them on Monday as well, So.
I hate the Welsh, man. I hate the Welsh.
Brilliant stuff. So anyway, Newcastle,
Making itself popular in all corners of the UK.
Federico Fernandez could return to the squad after missing the last 8 games through injury. Callum Wilson, Fabian Shaw remain unavailable, but Joe Linton was spotted in the training ground this week. Of course, he went off at Old Trafford with a back problem. Not sure what he was doing, but he was seen. Javier Manquillo has also returned to training, but he isn't in contention to feature on Saturday. They're hoping, obviously, he will be fit for the next crucial game against West Brom. It's claimed, of course, we've discussed it on the show already, that Martin Dubravka will be recalled at the expense of Carl Darlow. As for Wolverhampton Wanderers, Raul Jimenez, Daniel Podence and Willy Bowley remain out, while Fernando Marcel is still very doubtful. Of course, Wolves looking to make it 3 Premier League wins in a row for the first time this season. They've done very well on the road in recent weeks. Mike Dean, this is his first game in charge of Newcastle. Exactly, and it's his first one since the 1-0 home win over Man United in October 2019, pre-COVID. Previous to that was the 1-0 win at Spurs in the same season, so he is a bit of a good luck omen. Kevin Friend is doing VAR, of course, as I always say, if it's switched on. So Steve, what's your take for that game? Dubravka Darlow, we've already spoken about it. Let's just talk about up front. Who do you see playing up front? And what's your prediction for the game?
The question is, will we play anybody up front? That was my first point. Will we play anyone? Will we stick Gale in and then stick him out on the right and leave a gaping hole and expect Almiron to be able to run into that hole? And Almiron's covering like 12, 15 kilometres a game. He's running all over the place. The lad's super fit. But for everything he did at Old Trafford, it produced nothing. And that's because he's picking the ball, in my mind anyway, he's picking the ball up back, doing what we've seen all the way through the Bruce's reign until a very, very short spell, like say, for example, against Southampton. He's picking the ball up on the edge of the 18-yard box, our 18-yard box, and he's just running with it. And he's running into a blind alley, and he's running at defenders that are 15, 20 yards away from him. And they're going, I'll just run now, and I'll run along with you, and I'll run alongside you. And he's running diagonally, he's running into space, and nobody else is running with him. So the lad gets into a blind corner, and he's surrounded by 3, and then he has to play the ball back, and then we'll have to go into this ridiculous routine of pass back, and it'll end up with the goalkeeper again, and then it'll be hoofed up. So the question is he going to have an outlet ball? Is there going to be someone? I saw somebody analysed the Man United game, not from Newcastle perspective, but from a Manchester United perspective, and said, and showed some videos today of Lindelof, and they went, the bloke couldn't head a ball, and he cannot head a ball, and it would be perfect for to have had Andy Carroll up there against him for set pieces or from whatever, And this was just a lad on Twitter who can analyse and can come up with something like that. And yet Newcastle's coaching staff couldn't see that or decided to dismiss that type of thing. What I'm getting at is that I don't know what's going on in the coach's minds. I don't know whether they'll stick Gale in or whether he'll go for a front 3 that'll involve Fraser and it'll involve Almiron running in a false 9, Fraser running in a false 10, and San Maximum running in a false 10 is in alternating. The big question for me, yes, you're asking who should be up. I'd stick Gale up front and just have him as the fox in the box. What he can do well, providing you can get to the touchline, providing you can pull the ball back and you can provide him with the ball, whether Willock, we saw Willock score, doing exactly that, where San Maximum can get behind, can cut across, and somebody's running in, and that's the sort of thing that would be good for Gale. I'm looking at the back four and I'm thinking I'll stick Dummett in. I would take young Lewis out because I don't think that they're coaching Lewis in the way that it's doing him any favours. We'll probably end up with Lascelles in alongside Clark, and if I was going to go for a right back, it certainly wouldn't be Kraft. It would be if I had to, I'd stick Hayden in as right back. I know people have been, I've seen it on the messages there coming up, people saying, find somebody else. For me, the only person right-footed, and you stick Hayden in, that leaves you with the midfield and what you can do. But I would certainly, obviously, the Gale and Almiron and San Maximum, what you've got to combat is, and the reason I'm looking at Hayden and the reason I'm looking at Dummett is because of their two wide men. And you saw during the week that they have alternated and they've started. Their wingers are starting to play on opposite wings, and they're starting to cut in and coming in. And there was a lot made on Match of the Day about the goal that their winger scored, cutting in and going across, and that's perfect. That would be ideal against Newcastle. That's what we've got to combat. I have visions of them tomorrow. If they know that Kraft and that they know that Lewis are playing, that the manager will switch them back over and they'll just say, get yourselves down that wing, get yourselves flying, get the crosses in and get the ball in the box and put the pressure on Lascelles, because Lascelles will be facing the wrong way and he'll not know what he's doing.
Yeah, I would agree.
Have we got coaches that can combat that? Have we got enough in our brains to do that and combat that? We're going to find out very, very shortly, aren't we? We're going to find out tomorrow.
Yeah, we are. What's your take then, Mitch, tomorrow?
As I always say, the owls fly low over the Urals at this time of year, and you'll never catch a platypus without an ounce of brie.
Christ, look what you've caused.
See? If Bruce can talk nonsense, I might as well. The fact he's now saying it's about players, not tactics, tells me he's going to change the formation tomorrow, and we're going to end up with a back five again. And the change will be in mind of combating their wingers, because that's where their strength is out wide and getting the ball in. And as Steve says, the change they've made there is they're playing the inverted wingers where they're coming in onto their stronger foot. I think we might as well go back to Steve Bruce's random team generator, because he's got no bloody idea what his strongest 11 is, what formation he wants them in, and how he wants them to play. We all might as well just pick an 11 and chuck it in a hat and say, right, okay, let's go for it. From my point of view, the one thing they've got is a lot of pace, and that's something that we don't have. And that worries me. It worries me a lot. It means what players are going to be defending already, giving them a head start. And I don't like watching them defend like that, because that takes them to the edge of your own box very, 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 very quickly. And it's annoying because Wolves are probably missing 4 of their best players. And they should technically be there for the taking. And with our lot, you never know what's going to rock up. I can hope that I'm badly wrong and we turn up and we put them away, stick 3 points on the board, and everybody can breathe a little bit again. But the attitude, as we said earlier on, that's oozing out with the backroom staff and oozing out with the team, or some of the team, is that they don't really think they're in a relegation fight and everything's rosy and everything's cosy, and it isn't. It really isn't. And, it's in the last I forget how many games it is, but Burnley have caught something like 13 points up on us and gone past it.
Yeah.
Fulham are catching with a rate of knots. We're not even treading water. We're now, the Sharks got hold of our ankle, and are we going to be able to pull away and get out of it? You know, it's worrying for all, and it's adding to the angst that's leading to more and more of the stuff we've been talking about elsewhere tonight. You know, about the people reading too much into certain things and wanting to score points and bicker and all of that. You know, and it at least it isn't in the stands. So you again, let's go right back almost to the start of the show when Steve's talking about Martin Samuel writing pieces about how the fans have somehow caused some of this. We haven't even been in the bloody ground. So, you know, it's like no way. So I'm not hopeful, and this is my biggest problem. Is I'm an absolutely eternal optimist. This will be the week it all turns round, and this is the week it'll get better. And I can't see it. I just can't see how we're playing in a way for it to turn around in any way, shape, or form. It's really frustrating. And as for the team, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, okay. Ian's busy writing his down, I think.
Well, I just think that tomorrow, from the perspective of where we are as Newcastle United at the moment, roared on by 49,000 absent fans, 2 false fullbacks, 2 false central defenders, 3 false midfielders, and 3 false forwards will somehow produce a result of 0 something.
False nil.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. Great way to finish. We're looking at putting up another T-shirt for the food bank. This is Q-Tech's offering. It is a Full Metal Jacket T-shirt with Penman, Spenny Mag and me on, which I think is a really good one. It's from the mind of John at Q-Tech. That's the way to describe it. So how do you enter? How do you bid? Well, you follow at NUFC Toon Talk on Twitter. Place your bid and all proceeds go to the Newcastle Food Bank. So it's as simple as that. That will last until next Friday. So follow at NUFC Toon Talk on Twitter. Place your bid and all the proceeds go to the food bank. We will get a bit of an update as to how much we've handed over. We've handed over pretty close to $2,000, I think, last time we spoke. But yeah. Steve will get us the full figures maybe for next week. I just want to thank everybody for watching. Again, over 500 people watching live. All the way through the show. It always amazes me, you know, how many people sit and who watch it. And, you know, as I say, we never take that for granted. Massive thank you. And as I said, tomorrow I am back, 7:30 for the match day live. And then I do have on Sunday, 1:00, Mick Lowe's joining us again. Mick thoroughly enjoyed his time on the show last month, so we're getting him back to do another chat with you, live Q&A with whatever anybody wants to talk about. And a couple of people asking in the chat whether we can have the clues again. Yes, go on, and we've got a minute or so to go. So there you go. Win something tasty with Hasty, £100 worth of JD Sports vouchers. So your first clue is this. Picture of the Tyne Bridge and the word lawn. And then your next picture is that rather wonderful picture of the Tyne Bridge. I'm sure I took that. 495 appearances, 31 goals. And then that's your third and final clue for this week. We've got one more clue next week and then the big reveal. So that's your final clue.
Can I just say, Steve, there was as far as the raffles that we do, or as the competitions for the T-shirts, I know there's been a little bit of question that came on Twitter. How do we know the money goes to the food bank? That was one of the questions that I saw last week. That kind of irked me. And what happens? You put your winning bid in. Your winning bid is the winning bid. John from Q-Tech will give you my email address or my Twitter address. I will contact you via DM, and I'll tell you where the money has to be paid, and I'll give you the account number that it goes into for the West End Food Bank. That's how it gets paid. Nothing touches anywhere else. Nothing goes into some mysterious bank account somewhere. So
you're not Father Ted, are you? The money's just resting in your account.
Exactly. It's not Father Ted. It's not being spirited away anywhere. And I've arranged and I've created with John an audit trail like you've never known. It's the most comprehensive audit trail going. And that audit trail of all the payments, everything we've collected and everything that's gone, goes to John McCorry, the CEO of the food bank, and Bill Corcoran, my colleague, and Colin Whittle, my colleague, and Stuart Latimer, my colleague, who set up the fans food bank outside the ground. And it's exactly the same as we do on a match day, where the people from the West End Food Bank take every bucket that is sealed and every single penny goes to them. So if you want to criticise, come and ask us, and I'll tell you what's going on. Don't just go on Twitter and throw some allegation around, please. Just ask. It's a polite and simple way of getting an answer.
Stevie, who's been making allegations? I want to know, who are these alligators?
I will be in touch with the alligators and the crocodiles. Don't worry, Ian.
Yeah, it's one of them things. It's just Twitter. As you said at the start of the show, it's been an awful week on Twitter. Been worse for some rather than others. We all get a bad week, but don't mess with Hasty, says Julie Baker. That's all we're saying. We'll leave it at that. Lads, have a great weekend. Great to see you all. Stay safe and look forward to getting you back on next Friday.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Real pleasure. Thanks a lot. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks.
Enjoy it.
Talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I can't